Welcome to Father and Son, and welcome to you, Tom, on this cold Tuesday morning.
Morning, Dad. Yes, this is the coldest morning in Melbourne, at least, for about 8 months, apparently. It was 0 degrees in many parts of the state, -2 up in the hills, so winter is upon us.
I think it's going to be a pretty cold night in Canberra tonight with the budget. I don't think there'll be much joy in it for the business community.
No, now, obviously, at the moment, we don't know exactly what's in the budget.
Next week we'll cover it a lot more because we'll know what it's all about.
But the funny thing about the budget is, in my opinion, is that they leak all sorts of bits and pieces, and it's all been coming out in the press the past 2 weeks. But in my experience, there's always something that you don't expect. You know, last year it was the resources super profits tax, and as we know,
they only leak stuff that they think people are going to like.
Yes.
Well, so they don't leak the stuff that's tough.
People certainly didn't like the super profits tax on the mining industry, and of course that was part of the downfall of Kevin Rudd. Not the only thing, but one of the things. Tonight, look, it's just a prediction. I'm just wondering if there's going to be something in there about restricting negative gearing on property owners or something like that. It's been a target. It would be a disaster, but it's a Labor government under all sorts of pressure, and Wayne Swan has said he wants to get the budget back into surplus by 2012, 2013. So that's
I heard on the radio this morning they're talking about a $50 billion deficit this year.
Yes, it was estimated to be 41 billion about 5 or 6 months ago. It's now going to be 50 billion. Of course, what's been happening is that, for a start, the mining rent and resources tax, which was really going to replace the resources super profits tax, all these stupid acronyms, but it's still not in place. No. And what's happened since then, of course, is the $8 gone through the roof, which means that whatever forecast they had probably didn't include the $8 at $1.07, $1.08 US, where it is now. Right. So as a result, their revenue is going to be somewhat lower than expected. Yeah. That's right. Anyway, we'll know more about the budget.
Yeah, we'll discuss it all next week. I think the other thing worth noting on this Tuesday morning is we had Monday night football and the Blues got up 3 points. Should have won by more, but it was a nerve-wracking game towards the end, but a great win by the Blues.
It was, and I think what this AFL season is showing is probably the wisdom in the long run of the draft and so forth, because a team like St Kilda, which has been in the last 3 grand finals, including, of course, the drawn one last year, is now almost on the bottom of the ladder, 1 win from 7 games. Even Gold Coast has won twice. Carlton is finally, one of those teams that is really benefiting from all the good players they've got, and is now 3rd on the ladder. This Friday, you've got a classic contest between Geelong and Collingwood, which I'm actually tipping Geelong to win. But the point is, well, we'll see. But the point is that it's getting harder and harder to predict who's going to win games at the moment, and that's good for football.
It's pretty even, the competition. I mean, I only got 4 out of 8 last week. Richmond beat Freo, Gold Coast beat Brisbane. There were a few other. Melbourne beat, who did they beat? They beat someone, beat Adelaide, yes. And they're all turn-ups. So.
And it's similar in rugby league, although, funny enough, in a different way.
We don't talk about rugby league on this show, Tom.
Well, I do. I started watching it, but the point is that, and for all of our viewers in the northern states, the thing is Melbourne Storm, which had players stripped from it and went through a terrible time last year, largely of its own making, is still winning games this year, even though they lost a lot of good players. So there's something the Melbourne Storm has, despite existing in a city where...
Well, I think they've got the best coach. Bellamy's very good.
Maybe so. Anyway, changing tack a bit, the other thing that really grabbed me in the last week was the Prime Minister's new asylum seekers policy. Now, for years we were told that we couldn't open Nauru or reopen Nauru because Nauru has not signed the International Convention on Refugees. Well, something they've done is deal with Malaysia, where we ship 800 asylum seekers to Malaysia.
People.
And then we take, I think, 4,000 who have already been approved by the UN Commission as genuine refugees here. But Malaysia has also not signed the refugee policy.
No, I think it's a very sensible move, because I've actually, I think, said it on this show. I've said it in many places. The way to stop the boat people is to send them all back. And what Australia ought to do, I think, is set up its own, decide on how many refugees it's going to take, go to Malaysia and select the ones they want.
Yes.
Then the people would sit in Malaysia and they wouldn't bother getting on the boat.
No, I don't disagree. Look, it'll win on many cases. We'll get genuine refugees and we'll be able to pick the ones we want from Malaysia. Hopefully the flow of boat people will be reduced, because once they know they can't get into Australia and they have to go to Malaysia and go to the back of the queue, the incentive to get here. But I'm just amazed at the hypocrisy of the Labor government, having criticised Nauru for not signing the International Convention on Refugees, is happy to do a deal with Malaysia.
Tom, you should never be surprised at the hypocrisy of the Labor Party.
Well, here's the thing, all their promises have been broken one by one. And the last big one left, going back to the budget, is returning it to surplus by 2012, 2013. I just wonder, given that's the last major promise that they've made, they haven't broken, whether they might as well, or, let's break this one too. Because
I think it's going to be very hard for them to do it, unless they lift taxes significantly, which will lose them the next election.
Yeah, so it'll be easy to break the promise, which is probably what they'll do. Anyway, it's an astonishing thing. I mean, I don't know if in the opinion polls the new asylum seeker policy really helps the government, because people look at it and say, wait a moment, we've been saying this and saying this and saying this, and it just copies what John Howard was doing, and you criticise John Howard, and yet he's been proved right.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the only other thing that we learned a lot about this week was Osama bin Laden, and he was unarmed. I think they did the right thing. I mean, the last thing you would want to have done is to take him into custody and take him back to New York or somewhere and have a trial. That would be a disaster. You make him a martyr. I think the way the Americans...
He is a martyr now. I mean, a martyr is someone who's died, so he's a genuine martyr now. But yeah, he'd become a rallying point if he was still alive.
Yeah, but I think, and the other thing is, they didn't make... There's no monument for him. They buried him in
at sea,
and I think that was very, very sensible.
The only thing is, don't you think, like the US has been trying to target Gaddafi with specific strikes and killed several members of his family, including sadly grandchildren who have got nothing to do with the conflict. I mean, I'm a little uncomfortable with this idea of a government seeking to kill individuals. I know the US has the death penalty in roughly half its states, but assassination is not supposed to be something that they do. And they can go on about how Osama was a combatant and all this sort of thing, but he wasn't. I mean, he was someone who was just hiding in the house.
Do you disagree with me? I think they should have taken him in and put him on trial.
I just think it sets a precedent. I think if you want to have a moral authority like the US claims to do, if you do things like that, you waste your moral authority. I think you have to treat people differently to how they've treated you if you want to have a moral ascendancy. And I think the US is running the risk of losing its... Remember, they tried to assassinate...
I think you're going soft, Tom. You're going soft.
Well, they tried to assassinate Fidel Castro for years and didn't do it. And to be honest, it didn't matter in the long run. No. I think targeting Gaddafi's family is actually the wrong thing to do. You should
I think they're targeting Gaddafi, not the family.
Well, but again, I mean, I think that's incorrect. I mean, why don't we just go around and start assassinating all the political leaders we don't like around the world and seeing how well that goes? I mean, it could be done. I don't think it'd be a good policy.
No, I don't either, but given they've decided to go in there to Gaddafi's place, I think the quicker they get him, the sooner the conflict will be over.
Well, maybe so, but as we said over a month ago on this, I think this conflict is going to end up in a stalemate. I'm talking about Libya now, and I think the Western intervention is a dumb idea, and I don't think we should be doing it.
All right, now we'll talk to you more next week about the budget and what it's going to do for the electoral prospects of the Prime Minister.
I don't think there's anything they can do in the budget which is going to win them enough votes to win the next election.
I agree with you. And we'll know next week whether Geelong beat Collingwood or Collingwood beat Geelong.
To deal with the big issues.
I think they're dealing with the big issues. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you all next week.